Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to episode 47 of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask four great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me, and our super special guest for today, Tony Blauer, who's going to be answering some questions today. Tony, please say hi, introduce yourself, and give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do before I shoot some questions.
Sure. Thanks, man. Great to be here. And I've actually been going to the UK for a couple of decades now. So I don't know if you noticed, you have an accent, but so very familiar with that and excited to get back to the UK. So I've been in the personal defense, self-defense, safety, defensive tactics space for 40 years now. Been teaching since 1977. And I kind of reverse engineered the world's first behaviorally based approach to personal safety, one that integrates physiology, kinesiology, and psychology. So it has impact and value for people who are beginners in looking for self-defense, but we work with law enforcement, SWAT teams, armed response teams, security groups all over the world now, military. It's been a very fascinating career, and I love it.
So impressive, so impressive. And yeah, guys, I was just saying to Tony before the podcast started, I happened to come across Tony in 100 Deadly Skills, and I had a couple of the other guys on the podcast as well, and it was just so fascinating, the stuff that Tony mentions in his part of the book, and I had to go and check it out for myself and ask him to be on the podcast. And I mean, the stuff that Tony has done is just incredible, and he's got such a great story to tell. Everything on his website is just fascinating stuff. It's been a pleasure to be following you for the last couple of months and seeing the stuff that you do. But hey, Tony, I've got four really good questions lined up for today's episode. So if you're ready to go, should we jump on to question number one?
Sure, go for it, man.
Awesome. Right then. So for my first question, tell me about your backstory then. So how did you originally get into martial arts? What was your motivation behind it? And how did it all progress to becoming who you are today?
Interesting and fun question. The My origin story, if you will, for lack of a better term, wasn't it wasn't planned. It wasn't strategized. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to do this and get my black belt and then start teaching. I was literally jumped by two guys when I was about 12 years old, turning 13, and two kids from the local high school saw me leaving elementary school after a pickup game of baseball. And it was very funny. They were like, "Hey, kid," and I ran over. It's like, "Oh, these older kids are talking to me. How cool!" And I literally ran over to get beaten up, not knowing they were going to do that. And they were like, "Hey, when are you coming to high school?" "I graduate next year." Oh, great! So you'll be, like, we want to welcome you to high school. And I'm like, "Cool!" And they grabbed me. One of them pinned my arms behind my back, and the other one started doing this bolo punch to hit me, and I screamed in anticipation of the impact. And I screamed so loud, I was so scared, because there's a big difference between a 12-year-old and a 15 or 16-year-old, right? In size and strength. And I screamed, and because the guy had me, like, he had pinned my arms behind my back, and I was wrestling to get away. And I was a good athlete. I'd wrestled, gymnastics, all-around athlete. So I was in really good shape, and pulling against his arms, my stomach was as taut as it could be. So I was like I was ready for impact, but I didn't realize it. He hits me. I don't even feel it, but the anticipation of the impact, I screamed, Louis. It's like this blood curdling scream. I thought I was going to die.
Jesus.
But I felt the kid holding behind me. I felt his grip change, like he didn't want to hurt me. They were just trying to scare me. And so I screamed again, intuitively. I screamed again, and he dropped me. They thought they had really hurt me, and they ran away. And as soon as they turned the corner, I was on all fours on the ground, like pretending to dry heave. I was on the ground going, and they took off. And as soon as they were gone, I kind of like looked, and I stood up. I fixed my shirt, and I was like, what the hell just happened? And I went home, and my dad says, "How was the game?" I was like, "Oh, it was okay, but you're not going to believe this, Dad. Two guys just beat me up. But I don't have a mark on me. My shirt's not even torn, right? Because
Mm.
they let go of me as soon as they thought they're." and he's like, did they beat, was it a pillow fight, son? Like, like where's, there was no black eye, there was no bloody nose. But that moment, he said, I suddenly was scared to go to high school. And he said, you got to go to a martial arts school. There was one open near me, Taekwondo school about a mile away from my house. I started going there, and I fell in love with it. And it was like within a couple months later, Bruce Lee passed away. This was 1973. And the whole, you're too young to remember this, but when Bruce Lee passed away, and Enter the Dragon was coming out, like the world exploded. Everyone got into martial arts, and his story and the timing of that, it was a perfect storm. But it was crazy because you would think the time you got beaten up was the worst day of your life, or a bad day. It was actually the best day of my life, because what it did, it put me on the path to here we are now, 50 years later. I'm 62 now. I was 12 when this happened. 50 years later, my company teaches all over the world, and we teach everyone, literally, like I said earlier in the intro, from tier 1 military groups all the way down to, someone like you coming to a course that goes, look, I don't know anything, I just want to protect myself. So it's been an amazing journey.
It sure has. And damn, 12's really young for that kind of thing to happen. But it really ties, this whole backstory really ties in well with what you're doing now, doesn't it? About the whole instinct-based training thing, and the kind of natural reactions to problems and disasters and stuff. And it's funny how it works. These tragedies and stuff, and these bad things that happen in life. Sometimes it either makes you, builds you up, or it takes you down, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a philosophy. It was funny. I was in Nashville a couple of days ago, for some business. And on the flight home, I was talking to this guy, 72-year-old, very, very wise.
Mm,
And his whole outlook, he said to me, this is just from last night from the flight.
mm,
He said, that when something bad happens to you, you can focus that this bad thing happened to you, but it's going to make you more resilient. It really, there's a lesson in it. And when you look back on it, that's those scars, those metaphoric scars, actually, augment and enhance who you become. But the message for you and anyone listening is, it's almost like the Viktor Frankl quote, the legendary quote of, like, between a stimulus response is that space, and it's in that space where you decide how you're going to respond or react. What is this going to mean to you? So I could have been a 12-year-old that got beaten up, and it could have become introverted and shy, and or I could have become a bully. Like, I could have gone in many different directions. It turned into something that was very empowering, and turned into a calling, if you will. My mom asked me when I was 15 years old, and now I'm like a fanatic. I'm training 7 days a week. I converted my basement into like a little dojo, and I got bags in it and pictures of Bruce Lee, and I'm doing this like every single day for years. And when I was about 15, so this is, maybe like 3 years later, she says, hey, are you going to go into the family business? Are you going to be a police officer, an astronaut? The mom questions, what are you going to do? And I looked at her. I was on the floor trying to work on my splits. I was looking at Bruce Lee magazines. And I said to her, Mom, school's not going to be really important for me. I'm going to be a famous martial artist like Bruce Lee. I'm going to develop my own self-defense system. And she pat me on the head, Louis, and she said, okay, sweetheart, we'll talk about this when you're a bit older. But I just knew this is what I want to do.
yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you did though, and I mean, I have to say that's very young to have that sort of thing figured out. I mean, people don't even know what they want to do with their lives until they're so much older than that. But I mean, you've completely been in the industry since since you could probably throw a punch pretty much. And yeah, it's just so good to see that kind of situation, that sort of thing that happened, built you up the way it did. And I mean, you've changed so many lives, and you've made so much progress in the industry and stuff for people. And it's just good that it happened. And I'm so glad that you've come out on top of that whole thing. If you've used that as your as your motivation to get into the industry. But look, so for my second question, this leads on really well, actually. I want to ask a bit about the stuff that you've done, obviously, after that, and you've gone on to found. So tell me about the SPEAR system then. So what does it stand for? How did you come up with the idea for it? And what exactly is it then?
Yeah, cool, cool question. So SPEAR is an acronym, and it stands for Spontaneous Protection, Enabling Accelerated Response. Spontaneous Protection, Enabling Accelerated Response. And there's some really cool stories about how I came up with the acronym. Um, the in the So I started teaching in 1977, and then I started teaching almost full time in 1980. I was working during ironically, did go to work for my father in the family business, but I was teaching private lessons 7 days a week after work. So I was like working these 80, 90-hour weeks. I'd work like kind of a 9 to 5 thing at the factory, and then I'd take off after work and I would do privates, 1, 2 a night and all weekend. And then in 1985, I quit working with my dad and I opened up my first school and went full time in there. And that was really the 80s were my incubator period. In around 1986, I was doing a drill. I was always very like we were doing like things like, if you remember the movie Fight Club, I don't know if you've ever seen it,
No, I
but
haven't.
um, Brad Pitt, and there's like underground fighting, guys who get together and just beat each other up, and we were doing that sort of thing in the early 80s, but with equipment on. We'd put on. I grew up in Canada, and we'd put on hockey gauntlets and hockey helmets, and we would do these scenarios, and we'd record them on old VHS stuff and analyze them. And so we were always doing scenario-based training as opposed to traditional training. And the thing about our system, and I don't want to get too nerdy here, but I mentioned earlier that we created the world's first and probably only entirely behaviorally based system, one that's made up of true sciences: physiology, kinesiology, psychology. And that means it works for anyone of any gender, of any experience. I could take somebody who's a black belt or a professional soldier or a beginner. And if I share with them some of these insights on neurobiology of survival, the neuroscience of fear, how if a stimulus gets introduced too quickly, your executive function can be hijacked, which means you can't process and access your complex motor skills, which are stored inside your cognitive brain, and your reactive brain, your survival reflex, the cross extensor reflex, deploys a startle-flinch, which covers your head, and if there's time and space, tries to push away danger. Well, I discovered that protocol, or that process that's hardwired in all of us, around 1986, doing this isolation drill called the sucker punch drill. And in this drill, when my training partner would try to sucker punch me, in the context of the drills, like there were times where I thought I was going to do like a wax on, wax off. I'm being funny there, like from Karate Kid, where I thought I was going to do a martial art move, but he'd be too close or too fast that my body would flinch. My flinch response would override my decision to block. So imagine if I said, Louis, I'm gonna punch you through the Zoom call right now. Get ready, get your right hand up and get ready to parry it or block it. But as we're talking, I jump through the screen. You wouldn't go wax on, wax off. Your hands would kick up. You'd go, man, you surprised me. You moved too soon. Everyone flinches. And here's the interesting: everyone listening to this call flinches, but no one ever thinks to flinch. So think about, like, you turn around, there's a spider right near your face. You go, oh shit, right? Or you turn around, there's someone behind you, and you recoil from it, or someone yells, look out, and your hands come up. Flinching is a subconscious, non-conscious response to perceived threat. And I figured out a way to weaponize it going back to like 1986. When I started to observe this, I've always been kind of like an intuitive scientist, martial scientist, in the sense where I go, hey, we got really good at this, then this happened and we didn't do that. Like what happened there? And I realized a missing block in conventional training is understanding how to manage psychological fear. Physiological fear we can't control. If you get an adrenaline dump because you're nervous about public speaking, or nervous before a podcast, or nervous about defending yourself, that the neurochemicals in your body and the physiological changes you can't control. The danger is when your brain starts to think, oh, I'm going to get my ass kicked here, and you start thinking about the negative stuff. So we use the acronym false expectations appearing real. So when I'm visualizing an event in the future, that's actually doing me harm in the present, but because of my own mind. For those of you that can see the shirt I'm wearing now, it says no fear, but it's spelled KNOW, meaning to know fear, to understand it. So we figured out a way to teach people how to leverage fear. Now, how does this tie to your question, the spear? While I was figuring out how to do intelligent scientific scenario training, I stumbled on this is the statement that we kind of extracted out of the experience, and that is, the people who manage their fear manage to fight. People who manage their fear manage to fight. So anybody who succumbs to the psychological fear of the threat kind of immobilizes himself. They truly become victims of the situation. Well, in that process, I started doing these isolation drills to figure out, well, why couldn't I do this move when that guy moved a certain way? That led to the sucker punch drill, and it led to the discovery of the startle-flinch in self-defense. Bear with me here. Hopefully this is clear. When you flinch, it's because you are afraid of getting hit. If you weren't afraid, if I was boxing with you and I stood in front of you and I threw a punch at you and you just kind of casually slipped it and parried my hand, it's because you don't have any fear of me. But if I came in, I got my gloves on and I'm like, I hit my gloves and I'm like going, man, I'm going to knock you out, man. And you're like, holy shit. Like, I thought we were just sparring light. And now you're worried. As I move towards you, your body movement would be much more erratic. It'd be more fear inspired. So I was fascinated with that. But in conjunction with that mindset was this wicked startle flinch, hands coming up, and you see it. You've had friends come up to you and they go to, they go to, like, they make it like a gesture. They're going to smack you in the groin, and your body flinches, right? So I was like, what is this flinch stuff? And I started studying it, and then I figured out, and it took me a couple of decades, but we figured out a way to weaponize it, to turn it into a protective countermeasure. And now, so SPEAR's an acronym, spontaneous protection, is the startle flinch. Why spontaneous? Because it's non-conscious. Nobody thinks to flinch. That's the coolest part of it. It's completely organic, and it happens, and this is the most important thing, you flinch when your situational awareness has been compromised. If you see me walking towards you and I got an angry face on, and you see me coming, you might at a distance put your hands up and go, hey, are you upset? What's going on? That's close enough. But if I come up behind you and I grab your shoulder from behind and spin you, and you look at me, you might go, whoa, what, like as if you saw a ghost, right?
Yeah.
So spontaneous protection enabling accelerated response. The accelerated responses, we're converting the flinch, we're weaponizing it, we're using fear and physiology to create a biomechanic frame that is the strongest structure that you can adopt, regardless of gender, regardless of size. And then the SPEAR is also like an iconic, it's not just an acronym. If you study any type of military history, you will always see language of tip of the spear, tip of the spear. The metaphor being that the true warrior needs to be the tip of the spear. They need to go towards the danger. They need to impale the attack. And if you're listening to this and you're interested at all in self-defense, you need to realize that you're the first responder in your confrontation. You don't have time to dial 911. I think you dial different digits in the UK.
Yeah. 999.
Right, but you don't have, you don't need, like, if somebody's about to jump you, you don't have time to get on your phone and go 99. Like, the fight's already happening. So we needed a system that bypassed cognition, that almost deployed like an airbag in a car, and that's what the startle-flinch does. It's pretty fascinating.
I could only agree with that. That is absolutely fascinating, and so smart as well. And it's just the coolest thing about it, I think, is just how it's so copy and pasteable for everyone, because it's just taking advantage
100%.
of something that's already ingrained in the system and just improving upon it. And it's funny that you should say that at the start as well, because I went to a karate lesson the other day, an art called Kenpo. It's an American one, actually, and I'd never done anything quite like it before. And I was training with this yellow belt, and the move that he wanted to do, I should have put my left leg forwards for him to be able to practice the move, but being new and stuff, not really knowing exactly what I was doing, I put my right leg forward, and his move completely didn't work at all. And
Right.
it just got me
Huh.
thinking about how he's training in this situation and stuff, and all I did was move the wrong leg forward essentially, and it
Right.
completely screwed up his move. And it's just the
Yeah.
situation could be
That
completely
this
different.
is very, Louis, this is what you're talking about is so important. And this is not to denigrate or put down any martial art, but in the street, you don't know who, what, where, when. You don't know if they're coming at you left leg, right leg. If you live in a big city, it's crowded. It's always some sort of multiple assailant threat. We can't. I listen. I've been a martial artist for 50 years. I love martial arts. If it weren't for martial arts, we wouldn't be talking. I wouldn't have an important and successful business. And so I'm not putting down martial arts, but the way they're taught like that is such a perfect example of what's wrong with martial arts. And it's not that the move doesn't work. It's just that you, as the attacker, needed to move a certain way for the move to work.
Mm.
And that's a ridiculous hypothesis when you think of like attacks, opportunistic attacks, or random attacks. They're so dynamic and fluid. You do not have the time to go, which leg forward, what leg, So interesting that you had that experience and that you brought it up.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. And yeah, like I said, it just got me thinking about the whole thing. It's just like this guy's I've never done this before, and I just put one leg forward the other way, and this has completely screwed this guy up. So, like you said, and anything can happen, anyone, and you can never predict exactly what's going to happen. But this is the entrepreneurial side of you, isn't it, as well? Because obviously, looking at the stuff that you've done, you obviously founded High Gear, I believe it's called, and that's a solution to this problem that you've obviously identified, and then you've gone and you've created this suit to fix this exact problem. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. Do you want to just quickly say how you got started on that?
Sure. Yeah. So and again, I don't know what you do in post production or links, but we've got some amazing videos of the High Gear in action and still pictures. We have world class MMA fighters who've used it to help prepare for their UFC fights, SWAT teams, military, martial arts sparring. But the High Gear suit, I had this epiphany, which is a kind of a big obnoxious word for this light bulb moment.
Mm.
In the 80s, when I was doing our scenarios, remember I told you I'm from Canada, we didn't have equipment. So grab these hockey gloves, hockey helmet, taekwondo chest guard, baseball shin guards. We'd look like RoboCop, dressed up, and we pound on each other. We needed protection because we were really hitting each other fast and hard. And in the late 80s, I said it was my incubator period. So I developed the Spear system. I developed the No Fear program. I developed High Gear, but High Gear was written on a napkin, ironically in Nashville, where I was this week. In the late 80s, I was doing a seminar there, and we were talking. I said I got to build equipment because it's too hodgepodge to just go somewhere and go, hey, give me that pad here. Let's duct tape this up here so this area is protected. But what I wanted a low profile, lightweight suit that didn't affect how role players talk to each other. Sometimes you got big, a big giant helmet on. A lot of the gear is very bulky, and it sounds like, hey, give me your money. And you're like, what? I said, give me your money. Right? Like in our suit, I actually have a helmet here. I could grab one and show the audience. In our suit, you can talk clearly. Like it's the nose, the eyes, the jaw is protected, but the way we designed it, but it's 10 pounds head to toe. So you put it on, you can do cartwheel, you can grapple, you can fight in a car, you can do scenarios in real locations. So the idea was to try to make all martial artists safer, all self-defense practitioners safer. There's a lot of unfortunate politics in martial arts self-defense, like me talking about what was wrong with that experience that you had. Somebody will listen to that and maybe misinterpret that as me criticizing Kempo, and I'm not. Kempo's got some amazing stuff, and it's how martial artists and practice self-defense that's the problem. So I wanted a suit where I could put on gear as a role player and say, hey, Louis, go stand by your car, and I'm going to pretend I'm approaching you to carjack you in an underground parking lot.
Yeah.
and we do this scenario, but you could headbutt me or throw an elbow or palm strike me because I'm protected. So you could practice breaking contact and escaping. You could practice doing, a disarm, but actually trying the move out. And that's what I was saying. I don't care if you do Tai Chi, Krav Maga, Jiu Jitsu, boxing. If you get the high gear suit and you learn how to do safe scientific scenarios, you can put this on and go, oh shit, that move doesn't work when people are moving erratically and dynamically, because everything works in a demo and everything works when it's choreographed, which is what you experienced the other night. It's like, hey, left leg forward. No, no, no. Your other leg. Otherwise, I can't do this move. Real fights don't happen like that.
Yeah, it's just perfect what you've done there. And it really makes total sense. And yeah, the whole situational thing really is so important. And it just got me thinking now, actually, as well. I do this sport. I actually have a business based in it as well called Airsoft. It's I don't know what if you have it quite big in the US, if you know what it is, but
Mm.
it's basically like BB guns and steroids, kind of a lot like paintball. And
Yep.
I actually feel like from being in these games and having that adrenaline surge and having these kind of situations where you've got people in actually very realistic situations, I feel almost more accomplished than someone who say has just gone to the range for years and just fired a gun, because your target's not standing still, it's not at a certain range the whole time and stuff, and almost just being in that the situation, even though it was fake guns essentially, I feel so much more sort of accomplished almost if I was in a situation like that, just because I actually have experience with that sort of that feeling in your gut and trying to get someone who's moving and stuff as well.
There's yeah, you just the only thing I tell people who do any type of scenario or simulation is recognize that it's training and lean into specifically what you're developing, and that
Mm,
is eye-hand coordination while you're in an adrenalized state, learning how to breathe properly when maybe when you're first doing it or you're nervous or you realize, oh shit, like I'm stuck here and there's two guys moving towards me. How am I going to get out of here? You know, just as long as you're going, okay, this is teaching me how to control my breathing. This is teaching me how to control my mind. You're developing attributes that would lend themselves in in a riot. Like you get
mm,
caught, outside in a mostly peaceful protest and something escalates and you got to get out of there. Like that training of staying focused and staying calm and looking for roots, and there's great value. The danger in any scenario training is pretending it's the real fight as opposed to a simulation or a reenactment. And I always caution people on that. They go, "That training was so good. I feel so good." It would be very different if this were a real knife. If that were a real gun, that'd be really, really different. But you're developing, identify the qualities you are developing and realize that if you're just standing on a flat range like once a month, shooting 50 rounds once a month on a flat range,
mm.
while you're developing the skill of manipulating a weapon, you're not developing any moving or thinking or breathing skills, which in many regards are maybe more important than the weapon handling.
Yeah,
So yeah,
no,
good.
yeah.
So good on you. So I'm just saying I agree. Just be focused on what you're really what benefit you are deriving.
Hell yeah. No, yeah, the whole situational thing is so important, and it almost reminds me slightly of the podcast in a way. It's like when I first did my first few episodes of no experience or no experience with podcasting and stuff. When you're nervous, it's because it's been like the same fear as almost looking into the dark and not knowing what's there, because the fear almost comes from just the lack of experience. But if
Unknown,
you
yeah.
if you get the experience and stuff and you have these situations and you practice it and stuff, then you're a lot more likely to be calm in the chaos and master your reactions a lot better. But anyway, so look, the whole fear thing is that's your brand, that's your point of contact for it.
Yeah.
And I want to ask a bit about that now for my third question. So it's a tough one to answer, but what is the way to conquer fear? Where does it start? Where does it end? And is it possible to actually lose your fear entirely, or is it only something that you can just convert and reduce?
Yeah, interesting question. Fear has been a companion of mine for, I said I was 62 years old, so probably um, uh, 57 years I've had fear. As a young kid, I was afraid. I was afraid of I grew up in the 60s and kids were raised differently then. So I was afraid of my mom if I did something wrong. I was afraid to not do well in school. I was afraid to ask, the girl out on the date. I was afraid to let down my team, if I was up at bat or something like that. So I've been, I would say, plagued by fear, the psychology of fear, for most of my life. I didn't realize that, like when I got jumped when I was 12, obviously there was massive fear, and it was the anticipation of being seriously injured. Like when that guy was about to hit me with the punch, what I visualized is that my ribs were going to get broken, puncture my lung, and I was going to die. I don't know why that popped into my head, but that's why I screamed so loud. So it was even that fear. But here's a heavy thing: that fear of that impact and the damage was also triggered the reaction that saved my life, in the sense that I overreacted the pain. That had a behavioral influence on the attacker, who then let me go. That wouldn't have happened had I not leaned into the fear. This is very subtle, and I want to explain this because it's so huge. Because what if I had just done like a tough guy thing? What if I just growled at them and go, when I get free, I'm going to kick your ass? Like maybe they'd have beat the shit out of me. Maybe they'd hit me 20 times, and if I just like played the tough guy, maybe a punch did break my ribs and accidentally. There's a campaign in Australia now, run by a former world champion named Green. It's called the Coward Punch campaign, because there's all these kids who are being hospitalized, put in comas. Some have died from people sucker punching them. I don't know if you had that in the UK, the knockout game. There's a period where people just like running around, boom, just like sucker punching people, king hitting. I don't know what you guys call it in the UK, but people get killed from that because you're not lined up like getting ready for a shot. You're on your phone looking down, boom, and somebody blindsides you from behind. Anyways, the what I'm getting at here is fear afflicts all of us in ways we don't even realize. And fear, psychological fear, is something that most men, but most people and most type A personalities won't talk about. You walk up to somebody and you go, "Hey, let's talk fear in your life." They're like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I have no fear,"
Tough guy.
And we're macho about it. But the reality is everyone has fear. Number one fear in the world, public speaking. Like just everyone has fear. If you talk to somebody who has good self-awareness, they will be honest with you and say, "Yeah, of course I'm nervous before this talk," or "Of course I'm nervous before this mission." But they're managing their fear. So to answer your question, your relationship with fear changes, but the fear doesn't. Why do you look both ways before you cross the street? Years ago, ironically, I came to the UK. I took my daughter. She was about 9 years old at the time. I didn't sleep on the flight over, completely jet lagged. We've got neural patterns and conditioning. We're walking around Trafalgar Square. I got her hand here, and I go, "Let's go," and I turn and I look, and there's no cars, but I didn't look the right way. I looked the jet lagged way as a Canadian who's looked in the wrong direction, because you guys drive on the wrong side of the street and you talk funny. But she grabbed me, Louis, as a freaking cab came whipping by, and it's like, "Dad." I was like, "Holy shit!" Like I almost just got run over by a car because I forgot to look both ways. In other words, when I say, why do you look both ways when you cross the street? It's because of fear of getting hit by a car. But now, after this interview, if you walk out to go get a bite to eat, are you afraid when you approach the sidewalk coming up to the road? No. But guess what? When I was 45 years old in England with my daughter, and I almost got hit by a car, my adrenaline system, my physiology was totally wrecked for a few minutes. But I'm a fear management expert. How's that possible? And I realized I was jet lagged. I wasn't paying attention. But I was more angry with myself because my daughter would have been hit by the car too, because I was holding her hand. And I was just so pissed off. But for the next few days, every time I approached the sidewalk, I stopped. I looked at the marking on the ground, look right, right, whatever the writing was, and I did it 4 times. I'd go right, left, right, left. You're not in, the expression, you're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. He's like, hey, you're in the UK now. But why I'm exploring this because I want you guys to understand this. A new stimulus or a new scenario was presented to me based on a skill I'd already mastered. If you're 4 years old, 5 years old, and mom or dad says, never run across the street, always look both ways, cars drive too fast. While you're learning that sequence, you're a little bit nervous, right? You're there like this as a 6-year-old, trying to look, and then, okay, running, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to give is an everyday example of how we acclimate to danger. So if I said to somebody, Louis, are you afraid to cross the street? You'd go, no. Right? But there was a time you were, you just don't remember it. And so I created a whole program designed out of studying violence, fear, and aggression on how to manage fear. And now, all these decades later, we've taught it in hospitals, psych wards, therapists use it, behavioral specialists use it. It's such a pragmatic system, and it's about this idea of that when we change our relationship with fear, we change how we relate to a stimulus in front of us. So every day we face some sort of conflict or confrontation where we go, the internet's down. There's COVID. There's a lockdown. I got a pain in my side. Are these guys following me? Whatever it is, I'm late for a meeting. There's traffic. We've got these confrontations, and how we relate to those confrontations is amplified by the fear we have. And it doesn't have to be fear of violence. If you're late to catch a train for an important meeting, or the tube, as you say, or a flight, you get anxious. Like, people are like, oh shit, I'm going to miss my flight. Then I'm going to miss this and I won't make the connection. It's crazy. So this idea of what is the neural circuitry of fear? How do we control psychological fear? Because we can't really control dynamically the physiological changes in fear. And as a kind of a generalized statement, how you manage fear determines who you talk to, where you work, how much money you make, how much weight you lift, whether or not you defend yourself. Like, it's this giant, as you used the term before, casting a big net. I look at everything we do in life. If I peel the onion back and I go, for example, when you decided to start a podcast, you didn't go, I'm going to start a podcast and then go get equipment that day. It took you weeks, probably, maybe months, from the first idea to, should I do this? And the procrastination period was only the result of fear. Because, mics and the internet were available, but you might have went, oh man, should I ask Tony Blauer to be on the show? He's really, really busy. He's the CEO of a company. How should I write this email? What if he doesn't answer? What if he tells me, hey, you're too small? Like, these are all fear thoughts, and so fear creates doubt creates hesitation creates procrastination. And if you don't understand the cycle, you are consuming time. And Louis, what is the only resource that all humans can't regenerate? What's the only resource we can't get back? Time. So when you understand how to manage fear, you actually understand how to manage time. And it's mind-blowing and groundbreaking.
That's so powerful. I absolutely love that answer. that really hits the nail on the head completely. And it reminds me of a story I heard a couple of days ago as well, the whole thing. And it was told to me by a former commander in the SEALs, and he said that an old man was speaking to these two kids, and he explained that there's two wolves that live inside of you, one in your head and one in your heart, and the one in your head represents fear, the one in your heart represents courage. And one of these kids asks him, which one wins, which one's stronger, which one comes out on top in the end, and it's the one that you feed more. And I just
Beautiful.
love how that sounds, and it just really resonated with me. And yeah, it's so true. If you change that relationship with fear and how you see things, then you start to really gain mastery over it. And look, Tony, I just for the fourth question, I want to wind back the clocks a bit again one more time, just for someone who maybe was in that same situation that you were in as well. So for someone who might be listening, who is being bullied or riddled with fear, humiliated, or just in a really bad place, what advice would you give to them to help them get out of that dark place and start out on a better path to conquer your demons and your fear and come out on top?
Great, heavy question. I don't know if I can do that justice because it's such a deep question. But if I don't care if you're 40 years old and you just got laid off, or you hate your job and you're thinking about going off on your own, or you're in a shitty relationship, or you want to ask someone to marry you, or you're 15 years old and you're being bullied, the movie in our mind controls our narrative, the movie in our mind. So when you're afraid, what happens at a neurological level is we start to produce a movie where you're the director and you're the writer, but you're also the casting director, and you're casting yourself as the victim in your own movie. And if you think about this, you know, let's say you had a stomach ache one day, and you go, oh my God, what if it's this? What if it's this? What if I die? What if it's, and you're building this up. And then, you know, you go to the doctor, he goes, oh, it's nothing. You know, were you working out recently? Yeah, you pulled a muscle. And you're like, oh my God. But until some other expert said you're going to be fine, you know, you're driving your car, makes some weird noises, and you're going, man, I'm broke right now. I haven't been making a lot of money. What if this bill is this? We build up stuff in our minds, and it releases cortisol and stress and adrenaline and wreaks havoc on our nervous system. But it's all mostly produced by a movie in our mind. That's the false expectations appearing real. So my answer to somebody who is having this challenge is to recognize you're in a fear loop. You need to get out of the fear loop, and you need to start with going, this adversity is going to make me more resilient. It sucks right now. I got to get out of here. And what you need to do is choose to be courageous and choose to be brave. And I'm going to share with you one of my favorite lines from our No Fear course. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. The primary ingredient inside of courage is fear. If I don't have a bottle here, here's some tennis balls, but if this were a bottle of courage, and I looked at the side of the ingredients, there'd be one ingredient inside this bottle, and it would be fear. If I ask you to do something that requires zero courage, then you're not afraid. But if I say to you, Lou, you need to go up to that guy and say, hey, don't treat my friend like that, and there's a risk of violence, and you go, wow, man, that guy's really big. I go, hey, you got to do the right thing here. You got to be the courageous bystander. You got to step up. That bravery, that courage is being fueled by fear. But we're not teaching kids, we're not teaching adults to leverage their fear by recognizing that fear can be fuel if I learn to look at it, right? And so really, that's been my life's work, that I realize now, way beyond and way bigger than the self-defense, the physical self-defense, is this emotional, psychological self-defense. And it's this idea of, is fear is my friend and fear is my fuel. Customato, famous boxing coach, you know, he had this quote. He said, fear can cook your food, it could warm your house, but if it's out of control, it can burn your house down and it can burn you. And we just need to tame and control that fear. It's like the wolf analogy. Who was the commander you were talking to?
It was Mark Devine. He's an author as well.
Yeah, Mark's a good friend of mine.
Brilliant.
He was over here for steaks last month.
No way. Oh, that's fantastic. It's a small world, isn't it?
Small world. Yeah.
Damn. I mean, that is such a powerful answer, and I just have to say I totally agree. And what we said on the last question as well. Another thing about fear that I think too is that procrastination period and stuff when you start to, if you just don't execute in it, I think that it's just the biggest murderer of ideas and potential and talent when you give yourself that procrastination time and you start to introduce fear into the equation. That's when things
But
go off, isn't it?
but it's always there. And so part of the No Fear program helps um, further develop our self-awareness. Self-awareness improves our critical thinking. Critical thinking and self-awareness allows us a greater situational awareness. Situational awareness isn't just about self-defense. Situational awareness is about seeing opportunities, noticing that girl or that guy looking at you, noticing a business opportunity, noticing something online that gives you an idea that inspires some sort of creativity. When your inner coach is berating you, your self-talk, you suck, you'll never make it, you're a coward, come on, man, don't be a chicken shit. It's this negativity. Iggy Pop, famous, rocker from back in the day from the UK, he said, imagine if desperation were attractive. One of my favorite lines. Like, think about that. It's mind-blowing. Imagine if desperation were attractive. Energetically, our aura, when we're afraid, when we're nervous, we project something's off. So if you're going in for a job interview, or you're pitching an idea, or you're asking somebody out, or you're standing in front of somebody and you're going, hey man, I'm going to defend myself if you don't, and there's this like fear and desperation in you, like, you're not getting the result that you want because you don't have this kind of self-awareness and balance in your mind. The last thing I want to say about fear is there are many things in life you need to do afraid, and that's okay. That's a heavy one because people want to execute on jobs or relationships without fear. But fear is natural, fear is normal. It's when you try to hide it that it impacts how you think and how you behave. But if you're just open about it, like I've started, I've talked like live with CNN and Fox, 500 people in an audience, and I'm shitting my pants. And I'm a fear management expert. You see the sign on my back wall?
Sure do. Very
Yeah,
cool.
what's it say? Read it to your audience.
It says fuck fear.
But that's not me being like a cool, obnoxious American. That's an acronym. It was a gift from my wife because our biggest, the acronym for fuck is face it, understand it, control it, know it.
I love that.
And now I'm faced with some sort of challenge, but I don't want to deal with this. We all run away from adversity. We turn away, we procrastinate. But the formula says, wait, turn and face it. Now, depending on what it is, Google the answer, YouTube the answer, contact Mark Devine, contact Tony, get a subject matter expert to help you understand it. And now the control part is the missing link in most systems, because we think if you're looking at my shirt that when I get my diploma, it's no fear, N-O, but it's always no fear. It's always, I need to know this fear to improve my life. That's why the fear is there.
Damn right. Damn right. And yeah, it makes me think something I've always theorized a lot about as well is just the fear of the dark. It's not the darkness that people are scared of. It's the not knowing what's in that darkness and what could be in that darkness. And the world the way it is right now is so much uncertainty, COVID and everything that's going on with the war in Ukraine, everything. There's so much uncertainty, and that's what breeds fear, isn't it? And but like you said, courage and fear, it's like the yin and yang almost of that world. And it gives you the opportunity, fear, to build yourself up. And just like you did in that situation when you were 12, that's what happened to you. And
we have no choice, man. We
yeah.
have no choice. Listen, it's a choiceless choice because the governments and the media are weaponizing fear.
Mm.
and they're using it using the classic formula for propaganda to make us all afraid. And the only way you can combat that is to improve your critical thinking. And the only way you improve your critical thinking is to further develop your self-awareness. And the only way you do that, the fastest way to improve self-awareness is through understanding fear.
Excellent. That is
There's
spot
one of my
on.
doggies.
Hello, audio listeners. You better get on YouTube to have a look at this. This is unlimitedly cute what I'm seeing right now. But hey, so that has been our 4 questions for today, Tony. And before we wrap it up, special guest there as well coming in on the podcast. It is time for what I love to call the shameless plug. So, Tony, just feel free to take a minute and promote anything that you're working on, you want people to take a look at, or just something you believe in.
I wrote a 9-page ebook called Making Friends with Fear. Please link it. My office, my team should have sent you some good links. Please Google it online, or if you don't want to wait for the show to release or to look at the notes, go to info.tonyblauer.com, and it's called Making Friends with Fear. Total transparency. It'll put you in my funnel and try and get you to invest in the No Fear digital program. You don't need to, you can opt out, but why wouldn't you want to learn how to master fear? Because it'll totally empower you, and we all face different fears. But Making Friends with Fear, it's 9 pages, but it took me, I joke, they go, how long did it take you to write? And I go, it took me 43 years. And I'm like, you worked on it for 43 years? Yeah. It was the insight of 43 years. If you said to me, what are your most important tenets about fear and managing fear? And the reason that's the most important thing, I'd like you to sign up for a Be Your Own Bodyguard course. If you're a martial artist or self-defense instructor, would I like you to affiliate and learn? Yeah, everyone buy 10 high gear suits and I'll make another $1 million. I don't know what your demographic, your audience is, but it's not about that. At the end of the day, you will or won't buy a high gear suit because of fear. You will or won't sign up for a self-defense course because of fear. You will or won't defend yourself because of fear, right? So the biggest gift I can give you is some free inspirational, motivational insight on how to manage your own fear.
Damn right. There it is. And guys, all I can say is fuck fear. Click that link in the description. It's going to be there. I'm going to make sure that's linked straight up at the very top. So yeah, guys, go and check that out. But hey, Tony, thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast. This has been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, buddy.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. This has been episode 47. We are really, really closing in on number 50 now. I'm so excited for it. But if you'd like to listen to our past episodes, go and have a look at our channel. And if you'd like to listen in for our future ones, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. Signing off for now.